Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And today we have a student that in the first 3 deals made $70,000 by real estate wholesaling. We're going to talk about all the ups, all the downs, all the mistakes he has done, what led him to wholesaling real estate, and where did he learn real estate wholesaling, and where did he take it from there. This student has been actively doing real estate or learning about real estate only for the past year. So to achieve this success in a year is extremely exceptional. So I think all of you can take very good lessons from this conversation. So let's dive right into the conversation. Well, Joe, I appreciate you joining me today. I think it's I know we've been talking for some time and we've been messaging on Instagram. So kind of having you join today, talk about your journey is super exciting. I think that you have a unique journey and unique things that you do, and there's a lot of people that are going to find value in it. So thank you, Joe, for joining today.
Yeah, absolutely. And just so people know, like when you had asked me, like, "Hey, can you share your story?" Like, because we were just messaging back and forth. I was like, "Dude, like, not really. Like, can we do this like later?" But I think you made a good point where you're like, it's good to highlight someone in the early days so that it like one, it'll inspire people, educate people, and then two, like actually give the reality of like, hey, how is it starting with the business and kind of like what you said, I mean, before, where the industry's so hyped up, people make it sound so easy and everything. And it's like, from a business standpoint, it is a simple business, right? It's marketing, sales. If it's like wholesaling, it's the craft is simple compared to a lot of other businesses, but it's still a business. It's still hard. It's still a grind.
Yeah, the structure is simple, right? You got this thing, you got this thing. There's not much to it when you just look at it from outside, right? And when you start getting in the weeds of things, that's when things become complicated. And consistency is probably the biggest thing that I see a lot of people fail in, and I think that's in anything, right? So I think the fact that you've stayed consistent is great, and the fact about you sharing your initial story, I think this is awesome because not only for people that are going to be viewing this, but also I think for you yourself, when you look back to this couple years down the line when you're doing business and you're like, oh, well, I did do this, and I talked about it. This is going to be recorded. It's going to be part of your memory that you can look back to. And because like when I started my YouTube channel, I did the same thing. Started when I had no deals, and so I was kind of like, I don't know if it's gonna works out great. If it doesn't, I guess I delete this channel. So that's kind of my thought process was. So I think I appreciate you doing that. Talking about starting, just walk us through a little bit more about how you started. Like, what did this, where did wholesaling come about? Like, where all this came from? And yeah.
So let's rewind a little bit. So like the idea of real estate always seemed cool. Like from I was in college, entered into like my career, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But like the idea was cool, but even throughout all that, I never knew what wholesaling was, like in the real estate sense. Like literally until like I probably a month before I started. So basically,
Mhm.
real estate was cool. Excuse me. Basically graduated college, went into my like industry, went into financial planning, became obsessed. I say that's like my first like love as far as business goes. Love that industry. Financial planning, helping people with retirement, investments, taxes,
Mhm.
stuff. So like I learned kind of, how to consult with people, how to be on the phones, how to have some sales background. So like I had that. And then, but I was always like, I would say at the start of 20, so last year, at the start of 2024 was where I was like, okay, like I'm at, my career right now, but I also want to kind of pursue something that can just get me like more ahead in that sense. And like, what is it? And I was just researching. I think this was maybe like January or February, I was like, let me just start researching more. That way, me and my wife can, you know, buy something or do something out of state or what, like very lightly, very like high level. I was like, oh, maybe we can buy a rental out of state. That was like my initial thought. And I was just researching in the mornings, like before work and stuff like that. And I Googled, like, I was like, you know what? Like, I've heard of wholesaling, but I don't know what it is. And I just quick Googled, like, what is wholesaling real estate? What is all that? And I didn't see like a TikTok or a YouTube or I was like
Mhm.
stuff that was like clickbaity. I was just like, no, like, how does this actually work? And once I kind of like understood it, and I'm like, oh, like this is just very much, it's finding the deal, but it's marketing and sales. It's
Mhm.
marketing and sales business. We just so happen to be, the product is real estate, right? Where once I like looked at that, I was like, oh, like I'm kind of already doing this in a different industry.
Mhm.
I just kind of, sure, I got to learn a different industry. Sure, you got to learn certain things, but like I can take the skills that I have, perfect on them, and apply it here. So I was like, I very much kind of like from there, I was like, okay, let me kind of just like, that's where I think I looked up like wholesaling course, but I was like, what's something like inexpensive that I can just like give me some education. That's where I found you and you like your stuff. And I was like, oh, whatever. Like this is, I don't even know, dude. It was like 15, 20, 30, and like, where I was like, oh, like whatever. Like, let me just see, let me just research, and started going through it. And I was like, okay, this is cool. Like I was at a point too where I was like, I feel like it's being put in front of me. If I don't take a step to just try something, even on the side, it's like, what am I doing? Why am I progressing? Why am I waiting? I've been wanting to do something else. Not like that I didn't like my career, but something else on the side,
Mhm.
for a while. So that's where I was like, okay, let me start this. Kind of started like education wise. I was like, okay, let me start trying to do this part time. It was a nightmare, dude, trying to do it part time. Like because I also like I had a job where like I had to be present. I was on calls all day. Like it wasn't like, I know some people like, and we've all kind of maybe had those jobs where like they're remote. You maybe work like
Well,
out.
yeah.
Like I couldn't do that. And I was kind of in a point where I was like kind of being micromanaged, and I was like, I can't do that. So I was kind of just working one day a week, like on a Saturday. And even when, I mean, dude, in wholesale, you got leads, like nothing's gonna happen if you're doing this one day a week, really.
For
Like,
sure.
like,
Time is of essence when it comes to wholesaling. These people are not going to be waiting for you to reply to them forever. If you don't reply to them, someone else will. So for sure, 100%.
yeah. So I was trying to do it like one day a week from, I would say, I don't know, like by the time I jumped on the phone, probably like March to about June. It was a struggle in the sense that, like, one, it was newer, so it was fine.
Yeah.
But I just like, I would think I was more frustrated that like I didn't have more time to do it. At that same time, and this is kind of like I'll blend the wholesaling with like my life as well. So we were at a point where me and my wife were both at like corporate quote unquote jobs, where like I know she was pretty frustrated at like kind of her job. I was like, oh my gosh, like I actually kind of just want to do this full time, because it was the thing that I was constantly thinking about. And we basically like, we're in our 20s, we're pretty young, we don't have kids. We're like, look, we also want to travel. I always thought it'd be cool to like be a digital nomad, travel and stuff like that. Point where we were actually like, we also wanted to like move to New York for a couple years, and like we're from California, so like we were just like, we would drive to the beach, we would walk along the beach for a couple days back to back to back, and we're like, man, like what do we want to do, like and just kind of thinking about this and talking about it. And I was like, hey, you know what, like we've always wanted to travel, and I kind of said it as like kind of a joke, maybe not that serious, but I was like, what if we just like, rather than going to New York, because that's super expensive, that's gonna demand us, like, making more, not giving us flexibility. We're gonna have to be at our corporate jobs and make more. Like, it's just like, where I was like,
Mhm.
What if we just travel? Because you can travel to South America, you could travel to a lot of these other places, and it's much cheaper than living in the US. Where I was like, "Why don't we just basically go all in, go freaking balls to the wall with this, and just, like,
Mhm.
let me do this, but, like, give us enough," and, like, we had some runway. We were okay in the sense that, like, we can take a massive leap, and I would say, like, we're young. We don't have kids.
Mhm.
Take the risk now. If we fail, shit, who cares? Like,
You can always go back to the job.
exactly. Like, let's do it now. Well, it's like, look, we don't have kids that we're providing for. We don't have this. So we basically, dude, this was probably like maybe a week or two period where it spanned to us deciding, okay, this is our lease ends in July. This is the day we're both going to quit our jobs. Let's backtrack this. Okay, cool. What does this look like? Where are we going?
Mhm.
Like, and especially once you're traveling, there's a lot of logistics. Thank God, like my wife takes care of all that. And honestly, now we're pretty good at it. Like we've been going to a couple different countries, and now it's second nature. She's like, yeah, like we got this, like, and I just did. I had, and we just packed up our backpacks. We basically told both of our parents, and that was like the most frightening thing because like
How did
they were super happy. They were like,
some
"But you guys like take the risk now. You guys are." I think they trusted that you're like, "Look, don't have any regrets. You guys are smart people. Like you think things through. Just go for it." At that point, and it was good. It was
And
good.
how old are you when you're making? Because this was last year. I mean, we're in 2025. How old were you?
I am. Well, I'm like 25. I turned
Okay.
24, turning 25. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
So
So
that's a big thing because two things, right? Because that first of all tells you if you ever saw people on TikTok, right? There's a lot of kids that like I mean, I was kid when I was 18, 19, right? So I can say that. I feel like my mindset was very different than it is now. But like a lot of people that are in that time that are like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing wholesaling." And like some people when they're older, they feel like maybe they're missing out, like they can't like it's too late to start, right? So because there's a lot of and I personally see this in my market too, in the Florida market that I'm in, there's a lot of younger people that are this and I'm not saying we're young too. I'm 28. I turned 28 last year, right in December. But like I just feel like that should tell you that you can start this business. You're not too late to start the business, right? You're not too late at 25, at 28, at 30, whatever it is, right? I don't think it's like you said, take the risk as early as you can. As early as you find out that you're willing to take the risk is when you should. So 100%.
you make me think of two different things. I mean, like, one is really, I basically, me and my wife had talked about it. And I was like, look, we've been working our like steady, stable jobs, making decent money. Like we were fine. It was to a point where we weren't like, oh my gosh, like we need to be making more, but we were like, we can kind of relax a little bit for like a year or two. And I was like, I basically said like, if we continue at what we're doing right now, and we always want to start a business, do whatever, 5 years down the road, it's going to be even harder to leave that steady job. 10 years now, even harder. Where I'm like, let's just rip the band-aid off now and do it and get the uncomfortability out now and get used to it so that later it's better. Another thing too is when I had quit that job as well. And granted, I want people to know like I don't necessarily recommend this because it before I closed the deal. Like, I was literally like, "I'm not gonna close the deal if I can't go all in." So, like, very a I don't know, maybe controversial topic.
No,
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 no, no, 100%. I
100%.
mean,
I mean,
everyone
everyone
has
has
this
their
journey.
journey.
I
I
think
think
that's
that's
a
you gotta personal decision. Yeah, I think you gotta know for yourself. I would say,
yeah.
definitely have some money saved up, like, their marketing money, like, this business costs money. It definitely does. It either costs you time or it costs you money, and you need some money to start. But, like, make that decision for yourself, but a as I was quitting my job and I basically, like, walked around the whole building and, like, kinda, like, said bye to everybody and was just, like, chatting it up, like, my last day or my last week or whatever,
Good bittersweet, huh?
there's some young people you can tell that are maybe like, "Ah, like, whatever," or like, "Ah, we'll see if he does whatever." Like, everyone's gonna judge, that's fine. Humans are humans, I get it.
For sure.
But there was some also, like, older individuals that I worked with, right? Like, I mean, 40s, 50s, whatever, and they're like, dude, you know what? I wish I did something that you're doing right now. Like, I wish I did that. And, like, you can very much hear the regret.
Mhm.
Like, just go do it now. If you fail, whatever, dude, you have to do it. Like, I wish I did something like that where I was like, and then I would come home and my wife would hear the same thing too, sort of. And we were kind of like, yeah, okay, we have to do this. Like, this is great.
Yeah, it's a great confirmation to, I'm sure because you had some kind of doubt in your mind, right? Because I know you're committed at that point, but there, you gotta have doubt. That's normal. And it's funny that you say that. My wife, well, and I are like 100% opposites how we started wholesaling. She started wholesaling while she had a proper W-2 job. And she actually still till this day works a regular job while still helping me, which she's quitting soon, that she's taking that leap of faith for herself as well. But I, the way I started is that I got fired from my job, so I didn't have a safety net. So I remember this was August of 2020, and no, I actually got fired in July, end of July or beginning of August. But and I remember talking to my family, and I told my mom, and I said, "Hey, like, I don't think I ever want to work for anyone again." And then she just kind of like, "Well, you're 24." I was 24 or 25 when I started. She's like, "Well, you don't want to work for anyone ever again?" I said, "I don't. I really don't." I said, I kind of am, I feel like I've been putting away my dreams of being a business owner for a long, long time. I said, and this is just what I'm going to do. She's like, "Well, why don't you just like apply to jobs and work on your business?" I said, "I don't care. I'm not even applying to jobs right now." And I said, "I'm just going full on the business." Mind you, at that point, I probably had like $2,000 in my bank account, but I had like $10,000 of credit card debt. So I was negative. And I tell everyone, I don't think that's the most mentally good way for you to start. I do think it takes a toll on you because you are worried about your next bill and everything like that. You're stressing about getting your deal as soon as possible. But some people, for some people, it works out that way. And, some people are comfortable with taking that extra pressure on themselves, and it actually helps you. Like, personally, for me, it helped me. If I didn't have that pressure, I may would have not done as good as I did. And I think that everyone is different, and knowing yourself and knowing who you are is the best thing to do. Like, do you need to slowly ease into this business, or do you need to just cut it off and just do it? And that's gonna motivate you to do better, right? So that's really important.
And to give some context too, like if someone's listening to this, like even though I went all in, like I probably couldn't do it if I were in your situation. Like I had been like working for a little bit, right? Like I was like, okay, I have some runway. And that allowed me to kind of relax a little in the early days so that because like you don't want to be on the phone and just like, right, like people will call
Please take my offer.
for
Please.
the street like mission breath and like you can't like you got have the ability to like the best person to negotiate is the one that's willing to walk away. So you don't have ability. It's like people are gonna see it and people are gonna read it and man, look at that. You know what I mean? Where it's like you want to still be able to sit easy as you're on those calls and everything like that.
Yeah, and the buyers definitely took advantage of that in the beginning. The buyers, when I had deals, could tell that I needed to sell this deal. And 100%, you're absolutely right. So I guess there's three ways to start it, right? There's the what I had go through, what you're doing, and what my wife did. So yeah, 100%. And I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I just think that there is your way, right? And I just think the the general consensus is just to start. No matter how you're gonna start, it started no matter what, right? And that's, I think, super important. Um, and so you've been wholesaling at this point about a year, right? So you said that, well, like you said, you've been learning wholesale, right, for about a year at this point, I'm assuming, right?
Correct. I almost feel like I didn't fully start until I started full time because, like I said, it was 1 day a week.
Yeah, okay.
I jumped on the phones in March, so we can say we're coming on almost a year.
Okay.
It was probably like July.
Okay. So you said, so let's walk through your timeline. You said you started calling, right? And that was still part time, or did you call full time as well? Did you try calling full time?
I jumped on the phone like probably 1 day a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were, just cold calling yourself, going at it,
So
by yourself.
yes, my original strategy was like I tried cold calling for like a week, like myself, and I was like, this is not the best return on my time. I was like, this is gonna take forever. Where I was in granted, it's like I had some money saved up, so I was like, okay, like I don't want to blow it, but like you're either paying the time or you're paying the money. Like,
Mhm.
granted, don't be careful how you spend the money. Because even last year, like, when I look at, like, costs and stuff, it's like and there's things I couldn't have known. It's like, "Why did I spend money on that? Why did I spend money on that?" Where it's like, now I'm just trying to build a healthy, profitable business and very much, like, know exactly what all your costs are, and you gotta spend money on marketing. Marketing is the sure, you just have to. Like, but so what I started, I tried doing cold calling for a week, and then I was like, "Okay, this is not gonna work." And then I kind of went to, like, a discounted, like, PPL model, which
Mhm.
I've heard of people having success. I think you can have success on that if your sales process is really dialed in, and you're really good. Um, Now granted, I came from sales, but I will say this, I don't think I'm the best salesperson in the world. I think I'm decent. But I also had to get used to, like, a new industry. I was used to, selling and I will say this, coming from financial planning, I realized that I was really good at financial planning. I mean, like, I would say really good where I was able to relax on the sales a little bit. Like, my sales mediocre because I knew everything else and I can just kind of explain things, but I didn't know the human psychology in an actual sales conversation. So I felt like I was like relearning that as I stepped into this industry, and learning like how to sell something else. And well, we're buying, but it's like it's a sales process, right? So basically, I did kind of a discount PPL model. I mean, it was just burn like I didn't burn money, but it was just again a lot of time, a lot of like leads that were aged leads from these PPL providers that I'm like, my goodness, like, and I think another thing I want to say too is like, you'll hear a lot of like wholesale teachers be like, oh, like 1 in every 10 leads you should close, 1 in every 20 leads, and it's like it's kind of bullshit. Like, I'm not saying people can't do it. Yes, if you're doing PPC, like the high end tuition, sure, absolutely. But just know where they're coming from and know who's advertising for these companies as well. Because it's like everyone
Mhm.
got I don't want to say an agenda, and I don't say it in a negative way. Like it's fine, but just don't judge yourself and your personal results because of what other people are saying. More so is the message. Because I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm going through 40, 50, 60 leagues to try to get something, and it's like, okay, it's still okay. It ended up being where I was like, I probably did that for like 2 to 3 months, and I didn't get a deal doing that. I think if I stuck with it, I think I would have eventually gotten a deal. I think it just would have taken some time.
Mhm.
And I don't think it was a bad strategy, but it was just like in the beginning, it is hard to have like some faith in something when you haven't seen it yet.
For
Right.
sure.
Or, and then I basically, once I kind of like surrounded myself with certain people and like I surrounded myself with like, Chandler and the Level Up group and like that kind of
Mhm.
in props to those guys. And they were starting to do like YouTube app. And basically, I was like, okay, like basically kind of sat down and I was like, okay, I'm gonna follow what these guys are helping me with and sharing and stuff. And I just gotta trust the process. I think I haven't given anything like the cold calling. I'm glad I quit that because I'm glad I didn't go too far because that would have took a lot of time. The PPI, I would have. I was doing discounted leads, so they were inexpensive. I don't necessarily recommend like in my experience, if you're trying to chip your teeth on the phone, get comfortable, all that. I would not recommend spending a couple $100 a lead from PPL companies.
Not in the beginning.
That's insane. Like, you're gonna burn through it absolutely everything. Like,
Yeah.
do that either. But if you can do, like, like, for example, YouTube, it's like our average cost per lead is, like, $60 right now. Cost per about 100. Like, that's manageable, and you just gotta make sure, like, however you're paying if you're running an agency, right, make sure your retainer's not too big, whatever. Like, make sure
Yeah.
the ad spend that you're spending on and that you are like fostering these leads and really milking them the most you can. Once I started doing that, I basically stuck consistently with that. And that was when I first had like, I would say the most success. I did lock up a couple contracts from like PPL providers, but they were super rural. This is another thing too, and I'm kind of going on some.
I think you reached out to me about them. I think we might have talked about those. There was a couple, the ones that you reached out to me. I forgot where they were. Where they were not in Texas. I don't think they were in Texas. They were in some. I don't know, but I'm trying to remember. Maybe I'm remembering this incorrect.
I don't know. So another thing too is like, and this is all just right in the early days. I mean, you're just learning so much so fast.
Yeah.
Like I tried doing like a virtual nationwide model to start out. I'm still virtual, but I'm not nationwide. I will say that.
Yeah.
I tried doing that, and I did lock up a couple contracts, not closed, but locked up a couple contracts that were just too rural. Like I to give us some span from the time I went full time in July to the time I closed my first deal, which it actually closed in November. I had locked up like 7 contracts. Maybe 2 of them had, like, title issues. Another, like, 2 or 3, like, I just locked them up way too high, and then the others, like, they were just so rural that, like, I you couldn't dispo 'em. Like, it's like, this is the I know some people love the virtual model or no, the not the virtual model, the nationwide model. It from a marketing perspective, if you're, like, looking to get that cheap of leads, I don't think it's the best starting out. I think, stick to a market and kind of hone in on that market. And that's what I've done with like Texas and like the major Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, mainly in Texas. And that's what I've stuck to and never step foot out of the airport in Texas. But
Yeah.
starting to know the markets really, really well now. And it's good. And like that just happened. I'm from California. So I was like, California is just super expensive. You can make money anywhere, but
Mhm.
the cost of entry is very high. So I was like, "Oh."
Well, I absolutely agree with you. There's a couple of things that I want to mention. First of all, when it comes to talking about markets, uh, yes, I say originally, if you can, do in your backyard, if you can. All right. So when you're in California, when you're in New York, it's tough, right, to do your backyard, right? So it's very tough. So then the next best bet would be to find a market that I said, if you know someone in that market, great. If you don't, then you can at least find a market that is like, if you get a good deal, you will sell it, right? Especially in the beginning, because I think that's super important. Don't go nationwide. Not a lot of people do that. Period. Right. I think that well, not a lot of people do that successfully. Let me say this: a lot of people try to go nationwide. I do think that's a mistake. I do think you have to kind of. I do think eventually you can expand to other markets and do all that stuff. 100%. I don't think you should be doing business just in one market, but I don't think that in any business, anything you do, if you spread yourself too thin in the beginning, you will not succeed, right? So I think this is part of that. And going to what you said, a couple of things that I think I noticed in what your story was is that first of all, um, you tried different marketing, right? And you actually gave them a shot before, well, let's say cold calling, you realize it's not your thing, but let's say the other one, right? The PPL. So you try different marketing and locking up 7 deals and not being in to like, and like until you actually got a deal that you sold. That shows me 2 things. First of all, like you said, title issues, things can happen that you cannot control. And you need to know that. People need to know that just because you lock up a deal or just because you have a good deal, it doesn't mean that it will close, right? And that's just something you need to learn early on because it took me a long time to learn as I was like, oh yeah, I locked up a deal. It's with the buyer. We're good. I'm making that money in a month. And that's not the case, right? Sometimes things happen. And second was the persistence. I think that persistence of not quitting after having 7 deals locked up and not finding success is detrimental. I mean, I think that a lot of people would be like, "Oh, well, this crap doesn't work. I mean, like, I don't want to do this. This is crazy. Like, spending so much money because I'm sure you spend quite some money by that point, right? So by the time before you close the first deal, do you include everything? Um,
Right.
so 100%, I think that's so important.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. That's what people don't talk about. Like, dude, every like business costs money. Like, it's like you're gonna spend money and you should. It's normal, but like
Mhm.
don't let like social media and think that it's not. Like, I mean, yeah, think that you won't or that you won't have to. Yeah.
No, you can do stuff for free. You can do things for free, but it's gonna take you a couple years before you get a deal. And unfortunately sometimes, and I mean, I just what it is. If you're gonna drive for dollars and call someone, I mean, I'm not a couple years, obviously I'm a little bit exaggerating, but I'm saying if you're persistent with it, maybe you'll get a deal, in whatever timeline, but it 100%, you're not gonna make it in a business until you start spending money. Maybe you'll close a deal, right? Is it a business then? No, not really. Right, so you need to a lot of things, and we talked about it. I remember when you messaged me about your first closed deal, and we're gonna get into that here in a second. Uh, you and I was like, well, now take that money in order to make it a business. Right. So now that you made that money, how are you gonna manage it to make it into a business, right? And that's so important. I think that's something that you always will learn. You always will consistently try to upgrade in because this business is super um, it's this business is super self-employed type of business, wholesaling, and to fully make it into a business takes a long time and a lot of strategy and a lot of people, and systems in place and etc. So I was like, hey, just start growing towards that, right? So that's the best thing you can do. Um, and so you said you've closed the deal in November. So, just can you share how big that deal was and how that made you feel and how did that go afterwards?
Yeah. Just before I share that though, like kind of what you said, like at that point, like locking up a contract wasn't new. I was like, okay, whatever. But I'm like, it's about closing one. Like at that
Mhm,
point, having so many like terminations and everything. And but once I had like stuck to the YouTube, stuck to Texas, I would say, um, that's where it was like, okay, I had ended up, yeah, and I didn't that first deal when I had locked it up too, I gave the seller like 2.5 months of a timeline. So, like, each one just felt long, right? And I was like, "Is this one gonna close?" Like, and then it
mhm,
finally closed, and it was kind of a relief. Like, I know a lot of people say, like, "Oh, you don't think it's real till you close your first deal." Like, I knew it was real in the sense that, like, I know people are doing it. I've seen people do it, but I think once you close the first one, you sound different on your calls.
mhm,
There's a different level of confidence, and you can kind of relax a little bit more and stuff. So that story basically, like, do you want me to go into like the wholesaler story or like what was going on?
no, I was just curious. I mean, yeah, that you can say like, what's the challenges you've had with that deal? I'm sure it was not like just any deal, right? And if it's 2.5 months, there was a reason why the seller needed the 2.5 months, and what was the outcome?
Yeah, this one is a good story, and it's definitely right because what we do, and like people are like, oh, we hate like investors or they just lowball or whatever. Like I try to be very transparent that everyone I talk to, like, hey, look, we're delivering speed and convenience as a service, and we're transparent about where we need to be on price in order for to make that happen, right? And this was definitely a situation where like it had to be an investor buyer. So basically, the seller like um he had he basically what was going on? Let's see here. The city was coming in and having to trim his yard or like cut his yard, and they were putting liens on his house for doing that. Then they knocked on his door one day, and this is all like after story of him telling me. Um, they knocked on his door one day and saw that the floor was caved in. This house didn't even have electricity, but he was living there. And it was kind of, he was a very nice guy, kind of awkward guy, and he had basically said, "Yeah, like, I kinda just gotta do something about it." And we basically had an initial conversation. I was trying to get this guy to, like, very much understand, like, "Do you not realize, like, this is a big problem, like, that we gotta solve?" And it's kind of a
Mhm,
weird conversation. I had gotten off the phone, and I remember I told my wife, I was like, "That was such a weird conversation," because it, like, didn't sound like a very motivated person, but yet trying to get him to realize that he had a problem, right? That was just sales and stuff there, but, and then we had that initial conversation, maybe, like, a week or 2 passed, and granted, like, this is where follow-up comes in. Maybe called him, like, and my follow is better now, like, I'm kind of blowing people up every other day after I have an offer. But at that point, I probably left him like 2 voicemails, maybe 2 calls, and he texts me one day and says, "Hey, I'm getting contractor bids, like, just to see how much it is. I'll let you know." So, yeah, sounds good, like, let me know, like, whatever. I think another week passes, and, he's just like I call him, we have another conversation, he's like, "Yeah, like, I definitely gotta sell it," and I just revisit the offer that we had, and I had anchored so low. So, like, I had some room, and I had just left it at what it was, and then when we talked, he was like, "Yeah, like, I have a different investor coming over tomorrow, like, to see the house and everything." I was like, "Okay, sounds good." Like, "What time are they coming?" And he's like, "Yeah, they're coming at whatever, 12 o'clock." I was like, "Okay, sounds good. They'll probably be all wrapped up at least by 2, right? How about this? Don't make a decision quite yet. Let me give you a call around 2. Let's see what the best thing is for you, and then move forward from there." So went in person, offered higher than I did. But as I was talking to him, I found out the fact was they want him out immediately. So what I told the guy was, "Hey, you know what? I don't mind matching their number," because it was like it was still a good number, but I was like, "I can come like, look, I don't mind matching their number. Um, but look, I know you gotta move out your stuff. Did they want you out in 30 days?" He's like, "Yeah, yeah, they definitely did. Like, hey, how about this? Let me give you 2 months. I know you're dealing with the city. Let me also call the city. Hopefully I could get them to kind of calm down about it and say, hey, look, we're in contract, we're buying the property, and it could give you more time." And he's like, okay. Then I think the following day, I probably called this dude 12 times throughout the day just to review and go over and sign the contract. And he was just like, he was at lunch. I remember he was leaving. He was driving home. It was crazy. Like, I was honestly blowing him up and like, hey, are we ready to get this process started? Are you ready? Like, I
Mhm.
called him 12 times a day. Finally got it signed. But like I said, at that point, I had gotten signed contracts. I just hadn't closed one. So I was like, okay. And then that, 2 months later, I eventually closed. Everything went well. And yeah, thank God.
And
And
how
how
did
did
you
you
find a
find a buyer?
buyer? And what was your fee after everything? Like
Yeah.
what for that deal?
Yeah. So this is something that I've done too. Like, I basically used a dispo house, like one of the big companies, to just off run it. I was like, look, I'm focused on acquisitions. I'm not going to necessarily try to learn, and I'm not going to try to squeeze out every single thing on the first deal. Like, if it's going to take so much time, I'd rather stay on the phones, continue
Yeah.
showing, continue with new leads. So I very much just had someone dispo it. And it was one of the big houses where, like, they close on it and they resell it or whatever. So my fee ended up being 25,000. It was a 25,000 deal. Um, I knew I was about to make 25,000, and I was underwriting these properties for a fee like that. I was like, look, this is taking me a lot of time. I'm not going to do 5, 10K deals. If something comes out to a 5 to 10K deal, cool, whatever. But going into it, you want to project and trying to do a big
Yeah,
opportunity.
exactly.
So I was like, cool. Even the guy like was like, "Hey man, like I think it was like a 22,000." He's like, "Honestly, dude, like I've been this whole week I have not gotten a deal, and I've just had people sending me bad deals. This is like the first great deal I've gotten. Like, let's just up it to 25 at a good faith, and we'll take care of it for you." I was like, and then since then, I mean, he's dispoed a couple other stuff for me, and but dispo is something where off market, like, I think on my next deals, like, I'm very much gonna do it in-house, like, I need that's something I need to build out and really right. You wanna perfect every aspect of the business, but don't lose sight of
Yeah.
Yeah.
missions and the money coming in. So that's what I did.
And I think a couple things from your story is that one of the things you did that made you stand out is not your offer, right? You didn't overbid to what the other guy did, right? You matched his offer. Um, and I will tell you this, in this happens to a lot of people I talk to, and I say, like, if you really want to stand out in this business, and this goes for any business really, is that you have to learn how to go the extra mile. Right, because you saying, like, "I will call the city for you," you saying, "How about a timeline that would work for you?" You saying those things made you stand out comparing to the other buyer. And I think that is a big deal. I cannot tell you how many times my offer was accepted while my offer was lower than someone else's, just because of the service I provide. Right, and I think that is it's not just the personality, it's not just the sales game, right? It being able to go the extra mile for your sellers, being able to be creative. I know that, in that situation, yes, but people say creative and realistic, they think about, "Oh, yeah, seller finance, subject to whatever." No, and that's cool, but in your situation, you were creative with your offer because you said, "Longer timeline, I will talk to the city," whatever it is, right? So those things are make you stand out. And I think that's super important because if somebody wants to make in this business long term, you gotta learn just you're not gonna make it by just making lowball offers. Like that's just not gonna take you long term.
Another
Uh,
thing, like, you definitely want to have your sales process. You can learn all the things in sales, right? Like how to say certain things a different way, but like you have to genuinely have a big heart and care for the person that you're talking to. And that's something where like
100%.
that was natural to me already because I came from a point like I came from talking to people about their finances and I loved it. And like I just throw my passion into it where like I'm gonna care about you more than the next guy. I know I will. Where it's like comes through on my calls. So it's like that helps. And like you genuinely have to do that. You actually have to like care for the person. Like in
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, and that is something that they will feel, right? Because you can tell. You can tell when someone is like I think that I'm very skeptical about sales and I always have been because even though I've been technically in sales for the past almost 5 years at this point, but I think that sales is actually in wholesaling is trying to solve the other person's problem. I'm like, you're not on the phones or you're not on the talking with anyone because you're trying to convince them of anything. I said, you're not convincing them. I said, you are helping them solve their problem. I said, some people need a little nudge to understand they have a problem, right? So that's the thing that you got to learn. I said, but overall, I think I said, you're not trying to convert people. You're trying to find the person that needs your help. Right. So, and you have to understand that these are real people with real families, real situations, real properties, right? I mean, for us, it may just seem like like another hot deal. Like we were looking at it, the great, the numbers, another 10K, 20K, whatever it is. So for when you're just behind the desk, it may seem like you're dealing with numbers, but a lot of people forget you're dealing with people, right? And I think that is the situation that I see a lot of other wholesalers either teach or learn, like, because it's like the easy, like, oh yeah, just sell the deal, sell, sell. And it's like, again, I think it can work out for a deal or two, but long term, it's not a great strategy.
Yeah.
Um, and so you made 25,000 on your first deal, which is awesome. My deal, just to heads up, I mean, it was $2,000 on my first deal. So very, very, just to heads up to a lot of people that don't be discouraged if you don't make 25,000 on your first deal, right? I was in the mindset that my first locked up contract didn't work out as an on market deal, and I actually had a uh agent call me out and be like, "Yo, you're advertising my deal to people. Take it down." You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like that didn't work out. But my second contract is the one I sold. So it took me 2 months to close my first deal, but it was only $2,000, right? So and then afterwards they trickled in to other things. But I think sometimes it is important to get a feel like it's real because there is a lot of noise out there. But like I said, if you don't get a $25,000 deal, don't be discouraged. Um, and so you have successfully closed the deal, and this was November. So now we are in February of 2025. Where have you came from there, and where are you looking to head from now?
Yeah, yeah. So that was the first one. And I think once that closed, like there are a lot of things that were dialed in at that point. Just better, right? My sales was better. My sales process, like in this industry was better. Um, my underwriting was better, right? I wasn't locking up deals too high. I was making accurate offers actually. Um, And from there, I basically said, like, I knew, like, I'm like, I want this to be a business, like, where I have people, I have a team, all that, where I'm like, literally all that was just like, cool, just some breathing, and it's gonna be reinvested, right? I mean, that doesn't mean now reinvested doesn't mean I'm going from like 2,000 in marketing to 10,000. Don't do that. Like, it's just like, it's like it took me however many months. I'm like, I don't want it to take me that again to get the next one. Let me do what I gotta do. Let me up the marketing a little bit. Let me have some reserves. Let me, like, you know what I mean? Stuff I gotta do. And that's what I did in basically December. So up the marketing a little bit in YouTube, started having more leads come in, better leads come in. And we're always kind of adjusting that as I'm talking with them, and we're adjusting different campaigns and stuff. But like um the second and third deal, and I want to highlight, I'm not consistently at 50K per month, but January happened to be that month. The second and third deal just happened to fall in January, and the second deal was a 45K deal. The third one ended up just being a 5K.
Mhm.
Similar process. I'm outsourcing the dispo. These are all another thing too is I pitch cash offers and like MLS dispo offers, right? Novation, however you're doing it. And MLS has not landed for me. They've all been cash deals.
Mhm.
And it is what it is. Like, I mean, like, that's just kind of how, well, like, I like the cash conversion cycle better on a cash deal, right? You're getting paid quicker. And um I don't want I get, like, you're gonna have to eventually adjust price sometimes, but if I can avoid it, I will avoid it. And I don't know how other people are doing it. I think underwrite my MLS pitch very conservative as well, to where it's like,
Mhm.
it's not gonna take a cash one, they might not take an like, it's maybe 20, 30K higher. It's still super, super conservative. But that's where they've landed. So where's kind of the next step for me? It's consistently doing 2 deals a month, consistently doing 3 deals a month. But I'm at a point where, okay, cool, like, I'm having 3 to 4 offer appointments a day. Like, I'm having 2 to 3 hour talk time every single day, and I still couldn't get to, like, my colder leads, right?
Mhm.
So I've onboarded an LM, part-time. We'll kind of see, like, how that goes full-time, and I honestly project in, like, 3 months I'll need them full-time, and however I go about that. And, it's outsourcing that, it's trying to do everything better. It myself, all sales is a never-ending improvement game, so that's that. It's really getting good with the dispo process in-house because 'cause I've very much just outsourced it thus far, and it's worked out, it's allowed me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's great in the beginning, but eventually you learn that you're kinda, like, leaving some money on the table, and it doesn't mean that you can still not outsource in the future, you know what I mean? There's just situations sometimes that, like, I just can't find a buyer, and I just have this guy, like, I recently just sold a deal, we closed last week, that I'm like, I found and skip traced, like, 20 LLCs that bought in that area and had my VA call them and everything. I've texted them, whatever. No one was gonna buy the deal that I had, and I was like, the number made sense. And then this guy just comes out of nowhere, has a buyer, and just works out perfectly. And sometimes it's just how it is, right? And it's okay if you want to work with other people even afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. So that's where I'm at. I very much look at, like, my next skill, because you always gotta be attacking, like, the bottleneck in your business. I would say right now it's, getting a lead manager up to speed. He's very much in training. I enjoy training, I enjoy coaching, and I very much look at, like, as I evolve, right, people, like, talk about business like it's so glamorous, but it's like, you have such responsibility, and I take that,
Mhm.
like, I have to mold into a good leader, a good coach, someone who's willing to be looked up to, and I got to provide all the resources for these people. Because right now it's a lead manager. I want to stay in the sales seat pretty much as long as I can. Um, and really perfect it, and really, I mean, that's the lifeblood, right? And keep that going. But eventually I will have to hire, an acquisitions person, and how do I train them, and how do they look up to me? awesome. I don't not like I have to be the best person, but I have to be the best leader, and I have to be able to share resources to be able to succeed, and I have that, and then, it'll be a dispo person, it'll be this and all that, so it's like my next skill is very much, okay, how do we and things are, I guess, quote unquote slower. I don't like to look at that. This is all I know, right? Starting in this market.
Mhm.
My gosh, it sucks. It's not what it was a year or two ago. Sure, whatever. Like it's business, and you have to continue with the marketing and sales every single day because you don't know how they're going to land. And you don't ever want to slow that down, right? Because that's the lifeblood. But continuing that, continuing to just learn how to train higher, that I think that's my next step. And actually get it to where it's like it's a business, right?
Mm.
I'm gonna be working in the business for a good while, but eventually down the road, yeah, I want to step out of the business and just, see it over for you. But that's where it's like you got to earn that. I feel like.
For sure. I mean, I've been in the business for 4.5 years by now, and I feel like and everyone has their own timeline and story, and I do think that is something I strive towards. And I talk, I know a couple of guys that stepped away, but they only did disposition side of things, and I feel like that's a little bit more easier to step away because I feel like the processes on this disposition side of things could be a little bit more. I'm not saying simple, but especially it's not simple if you're doing off market, like you're doing acquisition and dispo. But if you're doing just dispo, I do see how that could be an easier business to just create, right? I feel like that's a little bit more straightforward. There's a little bit less variables per se, personally, in my opinion, because off market, like when you're doing acquisitions, like how many leads are you converting, right? Which list are you running? Which campaigns are you running? Like that is consistent. I personally that I have found that is consistent change and challenge, right? You gotta like readjust. Like the market is hot here, it's not here, whatever it is, like they said, right? So those are the more complicated things that you will eventually have to hire someone to do, and that is a more difficult position to fill, to my opinion, right? And I do think that's how it works. And man, I mean, your store is awesome, and I think that with your determination, I mean, I think that there is no when you have that determination, when you're willing to keep working no matter what the outcome is when you're eventually will succeed. Right? No matter how you feel in the morning, no matter what kind of deals didn't work out, it failed, that's when but that's when that's when the champions are made, right? When the things are not easy, when the things are not working out, right? So, and I truly believe that. Um, I want to ask you as one more thing is that like, what would you tell? I know we're talking a lot about new people and kind of gave suggestions along the route, but what would you tell to people when you're starting off, what is the biggest thing that you may have learned and you want to share with them? Like, hey, you should do this or you shouldn't do this. Like, what would you tell someone? Like, somebody's watching right now, they've been thinking about starting off. What's the thing you would tell them?
This is so hard because it's like, right, not knowing the profile of this person and like where they are at. But if someone's just getting started and like, I would say educate yourself, but don't educate yourself like too much because then it just turns into analysis paralysis and focus on just conversations, sales. And honestly, like I would say surround yourself with people in the industry because it helps you relax. Like when like what is an average cost per contract? And it's like, oh, it's 3 or 4K. It's like that allows you to stay a little bit more patient rather than you spending 2K and you're like, I don't know what to do. It's like, dude, hey, it's okay. Like surround yourself with that, know industry metrics. And I would say not people that are like 10 steps ahead of you, but people that are like 2 or 3 steps ahead of you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, um, and do that and honestly stay consistent. There's a lot of different aspects to the business. Don't try to perfect everything all at once. But I would say if it's wholesaling, it's not realistic. It's marketing and sales, mainly sales. Marketing is easier to outsource. Marketing takes 10 years to be an expert at. Don't try to be an expert at that.
Mm-hmm.
Be good at sales, be good at talking to people, and just go all in on that. And I would say, like, That's what I would say. I mean, and stay consistent. And it's hard. It's definitely hard. I'm not gonna like even now, it's a struggle, like with all the stuff I gotta do and like in a day. And it's like I'm in the acquisition seat. I gotta hit my KPIs to make it look good for LM, and I gotta do all this other stuff. And I gotta like it's a lot where it's like I'm not relaxing anywhere, even though I'm in these countries that like we're in Cartagena right now, but I'm looking at Medellin, but like, dude, I work like 10-hour, 11-hour days, like, right, like, so yeah, like, it you have to be willing to just put in the time, put in the work, I think, and grind it out for a good amount of, I would say, years, at least.
For sure. And that's so valuable, man. I think coming from a person that is so you've been very successful but also very fresh, right? That's where, you know what I mean, like it hasn't been that long since you started, so coming in from you is extremely valuable. Someone that's been doing it for 10, 20 years, they may forget what it's like in the beginning, right? And I think that's why it's so valuable, and I hope people find value in this, and I'm very confident they will. Man, I really appreciate you coming here and like really sharing your story. It it's a powerful story, a story of consistency, taking chances, and and succeeding, and failing and succeeding. so super appreciated that you came on the channel and talked about it.
I would say I don't think as a business owner you will ever, like you'll get to a point where maybe you can relax a little bit more, but, like, you have to just get comfortable with the uncomfortable and
100%.
take on the responsibility that you have. And if you want a team, like, that's a responsibility. You have to mold into that person. I've had a lot of people that, I have been managers to me that are not good leaders. S Much look to that, and I'm like, "I don't wanna be that person." I have to better myself to be these people for like a coach to your team, you know what I mean? And
100%.
you have to be willing to take on that responsibility.
If you ever look at any big company, they have culture based on who their founder is. If you ever look at like Apple, or if you ever look at I don't know, Nike. I don't know if you ever seen the movie how the Nike started, how Nike started and everything like that, how they got Michael Jordan and everything. Really cool story. But it you're the founder of the company, so you set the example and you set the standards for everyone else. So, and if you can say that you did your best every single day, I think that's when you can lay your bed comfortably and say like, "Hey, I did what I can today, even if it's not the result you wanted. You did what you can today," and that's where I think the best thing you can do.
Yeah, definitely. Good stuff.
Oh man, I appreciate you, man. It's so nice. I know we've been talking on Instagram for some time, so it's super nice to meet you, man. And I'm very excited to hear the rest of your journey. Whenever if you ever want to share anything, just message me. But it's awesome. It's awesome, man. I'm very happy for you.
Yeah, no, and I mean, just take the lead. Just take the risk. Like, especially I think you said something earlier where you had been wanting to do something too. Dude, ever since I literally got like my first job out of college, I was like, I want to start a business one day. I do. And it had been a couple years where I'm like, I'm gonna regret it if I don't have to. And I'm glad I'm learning on this business. Because I eventually want the financial planning business as well. But like it's gonna take some time. It's gonna take some time on this.
You. This is a good business to start for sure. I think this is a good business to start. Build your foundation, build your capital, and then reinvest that into whatever you want to do. That's real estate, another business, or whatever it is. This is a really good business to do that. I truly believe that.
Dude,
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much too. And thanks for like it was your first little course that I was like, okay, this is cool. Raf's a good guy. He's not like this crazy guru that's like say like it was just real, and it gave me enough tools to say, okay, like I can get this thing started. So I appreciate that as well.
I'm happy. I think that's my main goal, and that's why I keep it the price it is and everything like that. Just because I think starting starting and getting that push in front is the most important thing. So I'm very happy to hear. It is all your credit. I don't take any credit for this. It's all you. If you didn't work hard, you wouldn't be able to be where you are. So I but I do appreciate the feedback. Thank you so much. Uh, man. We'll speak soon. And again, thank you for coming on. And it was super nice to meet you, man.